What's up, Ghostbusters fans? Anchorpete here, and I am joined with a very special guest today. I have Dr. Zayas, Mr. Danny Torkel over there. Hello there, Danny. How you doing?
What's up?
We are having a little marathon today, me and Danny. We just talked to a little movie group this morning. Now we're doing Ghostbusters, and then tonight we're going to go interview the director of Seder, Mr. Jordan Graham. So we're having a marathon today.
Yeah. It's like I haven't seen you in like a discussion on camera for like about a week or so, and then I see you 3 times in one day.
Yeah. And for you guys, for the people that are on the Comic Books Transform channel, Danny's probably a new face. And Danny is from my other channel, the Lassercast, where we talk about horror movies. And so, Danny, on Comic Books Transformed, we usually talk about things that were comics originally and they got transformed into movies or TV shows. Sometimes the opposite happens, where something is a movie and then it becomes a comic. And that's the case with Ghostbusters. There's actually been multiple Ghostbusters comics.
Mm-hmm.
So, but regardless, we just want to talk about Ghostbusters because Ghostbusters Afterlife just came out this weekend. So, Danny, right off the bat, before we get into the review, why do you like the original Ghostbusters?
Why does anybody like the original Ghostbusters? It's one of the great. I mean, it sounds cliche at this point. It's one of the best comedies ever made. It came out at a point for us, because we're the same age, where it did legitimately scare us. Especially, I mean, the library ghost at the beginning. There were a couple other scenes throughout that movie. I remember the first time that Rick Moranis got like cornered by the dog really freaked me out. Because like they don't show what happens, and I was like, did he just get eaten? Like I remember thinking he got eaten by the dog.
Right.
But just the characters, and then as you get older, you realize like how much Bill Murray must have ad-libbed in that movie,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just insanely quotable. Like my mother came with me and Charlotte, who, if you go on the Lassercast channel, Charlotte and I have a review of this movie. My mother and I, this is one of those movies where the two of us, my mother is not a huge movie fan, but the movies she likes, she'll quote incessantly. And this is one of those movies, the original for us. So yeah, I mean, you know, we're children of the early to mid 80s. I mean, Ghostbusters was a movie that was just on TV and on repeat all the time.
Yeah. Well, I pretty much agree with what you're saying. For me, Ghostbusters is incredibly quotable. Everyone quotes Ghostbusters, and there's so many lines to quote. Like almost every line of dialogue is a quotable line of dialogue. And It is because Bill Murray's ad-libbing, but I'm sure all the other actors ad-libbing as well. It is certainly like of its time. And when you see New York of its time, that always reminds me of my childhood, you know, because just like you, I grew up in New York too. And I just remember New York being like that. And I think it's such a capsule of New York, you know, of that time.
Definitely.
It's this weird combination of just this great ad-libbing, super quotable, and like you said, like it has these scary moments and these like really well done scary moments. And one of the scenes that I always remembered I was talking about last night when I went to go see it with my daughter and my wife is you know the scene when the ghosts escape from the reactor, the containment unit, and there's that little song, that little montage where it's like, I believe it's magic, right?
Yeah.
That scene always gives me chills when I see it because it's this great pairing of like imagery and music, and it's like really, really well done. And it kind of doesn't really fit in with this like comedy that we've been watching for over an hour, but it's just this weird fusion. It's a very unique movie. Did that magic strike again this time, Danny?
If you're asking for me, mostly, yes.
Okay.
I very much enjoyed most of Ghostbusters Afterlife. Yes. And even the parts that I didn't love, I didn't dislike at all. My biggest complaint is, and I feel that this is a popular one, and it's something that I actually got to talk about with Chris last night, because I got to see him and Brian last night.
Nice. Nice.
Was there is a fine line between, you know, paying homage to the source material and to the original film and going too far into, you know, nostalgia porn. And I think this movie toes the line really well for a little bit. And then it jumps far over the line at a certain point. And that was the point where I was like, all right. But even then, there's parts of this movie that as you're watching it, you expect to happen. So when those things happened, I was like, oh, okay, there they are. And so, like I said, it didn't bother me, but I think I ended up giving it like a low 4 out of 5, like, or a very, very high 3 out of 5. Would have been my score for the movie. It's definitely a movie that I'm going to rewatch. I feel like it's the type of movie where I can do a Ghostbusters trilogy, like just bang them out one after another and enjoy all 3 of them for their own, you know, for my own reasons. Whereas, and I would also, Athena, my wife didn't see it yet. I would gladly go see it again with her. I would definitely, I do see why some people might not love it. What did you think about it? Because you kind of clued me in that we differ in opinion.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't like to talk negatively about movie filmmakers at all or anything like that. But honestly, I was like a little bit bored with it. And Ghostbusters, okay, so one of the big points of contention on Twitter is a lot of people, it's almost like The Last Jedi, to where it's divided. There are people that are like, this is amazing. This is a great tribute. This is the 3rd Ghostbusters movie. This is great. Then there are the other people that are like, why did they make a serious Ghostbusters movie? Ghostbusters is a comedy. It's a comedy about blue collar workers and like trapping these supernatural creatures. Like that's the whole joke, right? And they're talking about how like there's the Ghostbusters cartoon. Were you a fan of the cartoon when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, the real Ghostbusters. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so the cartoon did have humor in it, but it was like a little bit more serious than the movie. And so they were saying that the people that made this movie and the fanboys have this like reverence for the lore and for the cartoon. And for me, I kind of feel like I'm more in that camp because I loved the cartoon growing up and it had all the toys, and I love the movie too, and 1 and 2. But it's like I felt like the jokes kind of fell flat for the most part, and it took a while to get to where it was like exciting. Now, I went with my daughter. She's 11. She's kind of around the age of the girl Phoebe. I think Phoebe's 12. And I knew that like it might be fun for her to see them like discovering the equipment and seeing how it works and, you know, getting into the lore. But she was supposed to do this video with me, and she didn't want to because she didn't really care for the movie either. She thought that it was just not like exciting enough. And so one other thing that I was going to say that kind of bothered me, and maybe we could kind of talk about this in a second, but it has the Ghostbusters score too, right? Like it has those like music cues in it from the original movie. And it doesn't play the Ghostbusters theme until the very end. And I feel like that Ghostbusters score is so like synonymous with New York and like living in New York. It's like, oh, they're in an apartment, you know, and it just doesn't feel right in this. What is it? It's Ohio where they are, right?
Oklahoma.
Okay. So, you know, I just feel like the music doesn't match the feeling. Like it's supposed to be New York. And like, don't get me wrong. I have no problem with changing the scenery and stuff, but it's like, don't try to capture that New York feel in Oklahoma then. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't play that kind of Ghostbusters apartment looking music when you're in a field in Oklahoma, you know? So
I feel like that's kind of like one of these damned if you do, damned if you don't moments where if they don't use those musical cues and if they don't use that score, then there's going to be people who are like, oh, well, this score sucks compared to the original score.
Right.
And you're like, it's
Right.
funny. You know what movie I kept thinking of as I was watching this was a movie that we covered on the Lasercast channel, which was Dr. Sleep. And I kept thinking about that because that was a sequel to a beloved movie from the very early 80s where people went in and there's an expectation that you're going to see certain things and you're going to hear certain things.
Right.
And then you're like, well, do I want a fully original movie with totally original concepts? Or do I just want those nostalgia beats from, and a lot of people complained about Dr. Sleep that it was too, oh, well, they just, the whole third act is just The Shining again. And I didn't agree with that. I thought it was, you see, like it was necessary for the plot. Here, I also thought that a lot of the stuff was necessary for the plot, but that it went a little too beat by beat.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess with the music, like the movie started and you hear like what is it? Like the Venkman, and my mom literally leaned over and went, "They hate this." And I guess like seeing it with my mom and us like quoting back and forth to each other, it didn't bother me because the first thing that happens in the movie is you hear that piano. And my mom made that joke, like leaned forward, and I was like already laughing. And as far as the jokes go, I have a dad joke calendar over there. So the fact that like the humor of this movie was made almost exclusively around and built around terrible dad jokes.
Yeah.
That's just like hitting on all my cylinders right there.
Right. Well, I agree. And you know what? That's a brilliant fucking point comparing it to Dr. Sleep, because I didn't even think of Dr. Sleep, but that's very smart. The thing is, I kind of wish that it was more like Dr. Sleep because they have the whole true knot thing, which is not in The Shining at all. And it just like expands, and you're excited about Dr. Sleep because here's Danny Torrance as a kid, and we see how his life has gone. And now we want to see if he's able to fix his own life. And you have these fucking scary predators coming after him. I think that's really interesting stuff. And you bring in this new character, Abra. And when I was watching Afterlife, I kept comparing it to The Force Awakens. I felt like it was like The Force Awakens, where it's like, okay, essentially, even though it's new characters and it's like you're kind of uncovering the past that we know as viewers, you're still kind of going beat by beat of A New Hope for The Force Awakens. And that's what this felt like.
And you're bringing in, you know, the legacy characters as supporting characters for the new one.
Right.
I can see that. That's a good comparison also.
But the thing is that I'm really sick. I'm really sick of seeing geriatric characters that we grew up loving. Like, I don't want to see 80-year-old Peter Venkman and 80-year-old Ray. Or I'm sorry, Bill Murray, if you're like 67. You drink a lot of coffee and smoke, right? But it's just they show up, they kind of say something that reminds you of like when they were in the original movies, and it's like, okay, you're basically here so the audience can go, oh, but like that's it. And with Egon, so obviously, like, spoilers at this point, we're just talking spoilers. The movie focuses very heavily on Egon, and I think because of the fact that Harold Ramis died, it kind of connects with us, or it kind of pulls at our heartstrings. But like Egon, he's like kind of the last one you'd think to be as like the father figure, right? And to have this sort of whole legacy story. I mean, all of them kind of feel that way too. But to me, it was just difficult. Like it felt very shoehorned to make it like, oh, Egon had a wife and kids, and a kid, and then he had to leave and stay in this farm. It didn't seem right. It felt like shoehorned because Harold Ramis died. Like, what'd you think of that?
I really wish they would have that opening part. I didn't. So I really liked the first 2/3 of the movie overall because I thought that first of all, I thought McKenna Grace was phenomenal. Like, she was the best part of the movie for me, Phoebe.
Yes.
And I thought that Finn Wolfhard was very good. I liked him like integrating himself into this new group of friends. Paul Rudd is Paul Rudd, and he's great. I liked Podcast, that character. So I liked a lot of the first 2/3 of the movie. What I didn't love is that opening really scene where going in as the viewer, like I don't think there's any surprise to anybody that this is Egon's family. Like the credits, not the credits, the trailer shows you that like when they go to this house, they show you the Spengler name on the Ghostbusters. So like, that, and you also sadly as a viewer, you know Harold Ramis has passed. So going in that this is Egon's family. So the fact that like Egon, who was always the most like, I guess I don't know, how do you explain, of the Ghostbusters, he's like the one who I always viewed to be like the most straight-laced, the most straight and narrow. Like, he's not opening an occult bookstore. He's not trying to sleep with his college students. Winston's just like a blue-collar guy off the street who joins up with them later on. He's like a legit, I'm in it for the science guy with a lab coat. So it didn't make sense to me that they went with his daughter is getting evicted, and that they have no money, and also that he would have a child. And like, I get the leaving the family behind to like go and like bust ghosts and save the world. That makes sense. But like, I would have liked to have known about the mom. I would have liked, or like, if you're going to put Annie Potts in the movie, just make Annie Potts the mother, like.
Yeah. Like, well, she kind of got with Lewis, though. Or Lewis is Rick Moranis, right?
In part 2, yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, she was always into Egon, especially in the first movie. Like, I don't know. It just felt very, like, out of nowhere that, like, if any one of the Ghostbusters is going to leave behind a family from like a mother, an unseen mother figure, it's probably going to be Venkman.
Right. Yeah, the kid he left behind. But then you have to have him be in the movie. I don't know. The way you set it up, man, it kind of makes sense that it would be like Winston's kid, right? That like Winston would be the one that would have a family and have kids, but maybe he wouldn't be estranged. Like maybe he, maybe like Winston would go into some kind of blue collar job, leave the Ghostbusters behind, have a family. Then his grandkid comes and confronts him because one of the original Ghostbusters is trying to reach out to him because of this problem. I don't know. It doesn't feel right with the whole Harold Ramis thing. But I think that ultimately the big controversy is the fact that it is in Oklahoma versus New York, because New York is so a part of Ghostbusters. And it's like, do you think that they did that just because they're trying to catch on like the Stranger Things vibe? I mean, they got Finn Wolfhard. Is it like they literally were like, let's make it so different. Let's make it like 80s, because the town itself is very retro too.
Yeah.
So
they make jokes about how like you're stuck in this town and it's like the middle of nowhere, and it looks very like old fashioned. I don't know. I think I don't know why. I mean, because Jason Reitman directed this, and so he's a legacy figure in his own right. His father directed the first movie, or both of them, I think. And it's just like, I wonder if he felt like the pressure of like, I don't want to just remake Ghostbusters 1984. So, the history teacher in me was like curious as to how a Sumerian temple was built in a mountain in Oklahoma. Right. And then again, like enough stuff would happen. Like every time I would like it'd be in the theater being like, that doesn't really, and then like, oh, but I like this over here. Let's focus on this. And
right. I don't
So
know, man. Like, well, so like Jason Reitman. I'm glad you brought him up though, because like I didn't realize what a career he's had, right? Because like he's done Juno, Up in the Air, Thank You for Smoking, Tully, Young Adult. Seems like he works like with Diablo Cody a lot. And Sherry and I are like real big fans of a lot of his movies. And I was wondering if maybe that was a reason why he said it like in another location, like kind of like what you said, where he doesn't want to retell Ghostbusters, but also maybe because he thought that setting really played into the whole like you're getting your dad's legacy, you're trying to mend the relationship with your dad, your dead dad's legacy. I like the stuff with Egon and his daughter. I actually really liked like his daughter Carrie Coon. I love Carrie Coon to begin with, but like I like that whole aspect. And I just felt like Jason Reitman, he doesn't really make these kind of Ghostbusters movies. He makes these sort of character studies or these like studies about like people that are dealing with emotional issues,
What is Carrie Coon from?
Okay. So Carrie Coon's fucking awesome. She's in a movie called The Nest, which we reviewed on the Anchorpete channel. But she's also in she's in the 3rd season of Fargo. She's in
Got to get on that series.
Dude, you really do. Yeah. She was in Infinity War. It's gonna be a little weird, but she's like
she's Proxima Midnight.
Right.
That's why I didn't recognize her.
Yeah. But she's a lot of things, man. I recommend renting The Nest if you can at one point too. It's like real slow kind of. The Nest. It's not. They frame it like it's a thriller, but it's not. It's really more like a story about a family.
You know what I like about her, and I feel bad if this comes across as superficial. She's very, very pretty, but she doesn't look Hollywood pretty. She looks like a real person. Because I feel like they could have easily done this movie and cast like Elizabeth Banks, who looks like stunning Hollywood gorgeous. And Carrie Coon is beautiful, but she also looks like she could be a teacher at the school I work at. Whereas nobody who looks like Elizabeth Banks works anywhere where you work. You know what I mean? Like, I hope that doesn't come across as superficial, but
no. Dude, I'm so glad you brought that up.
And Paul Rudd, who, despite being the sexiest man alive, still manages to pull off that dopey everyman who could be a summer school teacher, because he's not the sexiest man alive. He's just Paul freaking Rudd. That's just him.
Yeah. Dude, I'm so glad that you made that point, though, because Elizabeth Banks and Paul Rudd, they're all kind of from this same kind of group of comedians, right? That Wet Hot Summer group, right? And I think that's why this movie is kind of jarring to me, because Ghostbusters is really like of its time. And it's really like that whole SNL, what is it? The Canadian thing is like Second City, right?
Second City, that's Chicago.
Right. So it's like those two groups, right? Like the Dan Aykroyd and the Harold Ramis and fucking Bill Murray, right? Like it's them mixed with this kind of scary movie that has this amazing special effects, and it's just so of its time. And there's not really like a comedic group right now that you could pair it up with. You can't really do it like Seth Rogen and like, I don't know. I mean, Paul Rudd could have been one of the Ghostbusters if they had done it like now. They tried to do it with the female version of Ghostbusters, but that leaned too much into the comedy. It's kind of funny. It's like both of them are two poles of the Ghostbusters. You got to get that like in the middle spot for it to work.
So I never saw the 2016 movie because it was just one of those things where it came out and Charlotte was too young, I think, at that point, at like 6.5, or like probably it came out in 2016, right? So she was probably 5.5 because she's a December baby. So she was probably 5.5. I wasn't going to take her to like the Ghostbusters movie. She wasn't watching The Exorcist at that point.
Not yet.
No. So I didn't take her to see it. My son didn't want to see it. And then all of the like reviews and controversies started. And I almost kind of felt like I don't even want to get involved. This movie is like toxic already, where it's like, if I say I like it, I'm going to get yelled at. And if I say I don't like it, I'm going to get yelled at. I think I actually have a bootleg copy of it somewhere, but I never watched it. So I will watch it because I love all of those women involved with it. Kate McKinnon, Leslie Jones, some of my favorite like female comedians. Yeah. So I do want to give it a shot. And now that this has come out, maybe I'll go back and check it out. But yeah. I have heard that it leans too much into comedy.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, it has that whole ad-libbing thing, because it's just them ad-libbing like they're on The Office or something, or, you know, one of those shows. And this movie, I don't feel like has the ad-libbing. And it's like, if you had the serious stuff and the nostalgia and maybe did something a little different where it wasn't Gozer again, you know, I mean, I did like that. It's like, oh, Gozer's going to come out again. And so we made this like containment unit to get Gozer. But it's like every single thing they did is like beat for beat. Okay, well, Gozer has to send out Zool, and I think they never say the name of the other one that much, but I think Vince Clortho is the other dog, right? And it's like, okay, well, then this one's going to get Paul Rudd. Okay, so let me guess. The other one's going to get the mom. It does that. Then Gozer comes back, and her freaking temple comes out, just like it does in Ghostbusters, the original one. It's like too much like that. Like little details.
And they're recycling, and then there's the recycling of like the exact dialogue also. So that's what I meant. Like to me, this movie jumped off the deep end of. Now, did they build in a plot structure why those things needed to be in the movie? Yes. But it was too beat by beat.
Yeah.
Of the original movie, like to a point where I'm like literally sitting there like mouthing the dialogue before it happens, because I'm like, are you a god? Say yes, yeah. Ray. Yes. Right. Like I know this is gonna happen. And I really did enjoy the first 2/3 of the movie. I got a bunch of chuckles out of it. I really laughed. I laughed at a lot of the like unintentionally, unfunny jokes. I bought into the heartstring stuff emotionally. I felt that. So I really did like once they got to Oklahoma, I really enjoyed the movie for about the first, I would say, hour and a half. And I didn't hate the ending. I just was like, kind of eye rolling a little bit.
Yeah.
In that last act.
And they did like slight little things that I enjoyed too. When they would kind of wrap the streams around them, the ghosts could kind of like manipulate the streams. Like Gozer does that at one point where she like bends the streams. And did you know who played Gozer too?
Who was that?
It was Olivia Wilde.
Okay. Because we were talking about that last night, and it was either Chris or Brian. I think it might have been Chris who said he thought it looked like Olivia Wilde, but she wasn't in the credits, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, they had like 3 actors play her, because there's kind of when Zool's like in this sort of spiritual form and she's moving around. That was like a dancer. Then the voice was like a man's voice, but then it was Olivia Wilde when it was like fully formed. And then did you notice that fucking J.K. Simmons was in the movie for like 10 seconds?
He was Shandor.
Yeah. And see, I like that. That's like a little bit of a change where it's got him in a glass case and he comes back to life. That was a cool little detail, but I mean, they just killed him in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
You know? So
I thought. I mean, if we're into spoilers, I think the actor who was playing Egon, who was a dead ringer for Harold Ramis, they probably used some technology to alter his face. Right. But according to the credits, I think it said, because it said like in the credits, it said the dirt farmer. And it said, I think it was Bob Gunton, who is the warden from Shawshank Redemption.
That guy?
I think so. And he was also the main guy's dad, who's the human puppet in Dead Silence.
Yes. Yeah,
I think that's him. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay. I mean, I see a little bit of Egon in him too, and he's
Mhm.
usually wearing glasses too. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Um, yeah. Well, I think they had a couple of interesting cameos too. They did waste like Janine. Like Janine just shows up and she doesn't tell them anything about the Ghostbusters or anything. Just leaves. Right. There was no Sigourney Weaver or Rick Moranis.
That was another thing.
What?
Like, are we supposed to believe that did the mom not know that Egon was a Ghostbuster? Like,
I
she
don't know, man.
knows.
Yeah.
She acts like she doesn't know who her father is.
Right. Right.
Or she's like, I've never met him. So did he abandon? Like, there needed to be more. I know you hate exposition, but I really could have used a little bit more exposition.
Yeah. And I see, I'm really glad that you said that too, because there's this big exposition dump by Dan Aykroyd, right? When she calls the Ghostbusters firehouse or whatever it is, his shop, he tells like the whole backstory on that phone call, And so I felt like maybe they did something different and then they like reshot some stuff and they just had him explain everything on the phone. Like maybe they had some flashbacks or something to explain stuff. I don't know. But that felt like that was they changed that or they didn't have that fully fleshed out. That did feel like there was something off about that.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, they tied it up nicely. And my mother like completely lost it and was crying, and I was kind of holding it back a little bit at the end.
Yeah.
Charlotte like grills me if I like even like act like I'm about to cry in a movie theater. She like turns to me and she's like, "Are you crying?" I'm like, I might have been about to, but you're yelling at me now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's touching, the stuff with Harold Ramis, especially when all the Ghostbusters stand next to each other shooting at the same time. But I just felt like the jokes weren't that great. Even like Bill Murray's jokes and stuff weren't that great. And I don't know, they're just so old. And it's like I don't want to see these characters that I knew when I was a kid be just old men just for the sake of, that's them. That's them. It's like I need something else. I need something more involved.
Yeah. I think this is the dilemma that I think this is the eternal dilemma that people have, that films are going to have when they're remaking, reimagining, or sequelizing a beloved property, is especially the older, the more like if Goonies 2 came out and they frame the movie where it's going to be and I'm just making this up. Let's say they're coming out with Goonies 2, a movie that came out a year after Ghostbusters. And they're framing it as the children of the Goonies who've grown up and they've had kids. Or that maybe even in some cases, like, kids or grandkids of the Goonies,
Yeah.
And I'm still going to walk into that theater and there's going to be an expectation that I'm going to see Sean Atkins, what's his name? Sean
Astin or Austin?
Sean Astin. I'm Corey Feldman. I'm going to see those characters, and if I don't, am I going to be disappointed? Is it going to affect my life? That's just a reality of the situation when you're making a sequel or a remake or something. Is, I don't know, it's always hard to judge.
But you know what? I think what makes it work, because the two examples that come to my head that make it work are Blade Runner 2049 and Doctor Sleep. And maybe it has to be in a kind of a serious context. Maybe it has to be like a kind of a rated R kind of scenario, right? But I think that like those movies work because of the threat and the problem that exists in that moment. And you don't have to like start everything up again. It's like there already is like an established thing that's going on and you're coming into it versus like, oh, these guys are coming back. The Empire's coming back in Star Wars. Gozer's coming back in Ghostbusters. It's like, have a fleshed out, established world and bring old characters back versus like we're just gonna bring everything back and just put it on the shelf in front of you. You know, I just don't. I don't know. I don't want to see that again. I like it. It works only sometimes, and I think Doctor Sleep and Blade Runner are like two really good examples. Or if we went back really far, like did you ever see like The Hustler and Color of Money?
I saw The Hustler. I never saw Color of Money.
Okay, but like those are kind of ahead of their time because they're like that, where it's like the Color of Money is a sequel to The Hustler, right?
Yeah.
And that's a great example too. It's just, I don't know, just nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. It's just kind of burning me out right now. And
yeah, I mean, as a horror movie fan, we go through this with horror movie like remakes all the time. Like, we talked about on our channel, like Rob Zombie's Halloween, where Rob Zombie did something crazy original for the first 45 minutes of his first Halloween movie. And then the second half of the movie is almost a shot for shot remake of the original. And it's like, nobody likes it. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Then he goes out and he makes a completely original sequel to that movie. And just, it's universally hated.
Yeah.
And then there's also like Fede Alvarez's 2013 Evil Dead, which basically says, we acknowledge that the Evil Dead took place, but we're telling a totally different story here. And we're going to make it with like the producers, the guys who made the original are going to support the movie. And it's incredible. And there's almost no plot thread connection to the Bruce Campbell movies. And
right.
it takes the like you said, there's no fun humor, one-liners. It's all like violent gore, and you're like, holy crap, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you and Brian talk about comics and comic books and show, like, how many times have they made, before the MCU came around, like superhero movies were terrible, and people complain that either you're getting too far from the comic material or you're straying too close to it. And
yeah, right. That's the problem. Is like, obviously, ultimately, they're bringing things back for the sake of money. I think that they made that Ghostbusters movie in 2016 because they wanted to kind of reboot the franchise and make some money out of that. I think that this one is a response to being like, no, this is the way you should do a Ghostbusters movie. I think that it just would have been really, really difficult to really capture that Ghostbusters feeling. And so they made something different where they made it about kids and it's about legacy versus like a new set of guys becoming the Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm.
A new set of like comedians of this time being the Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And I hear what you're saying, man. Like, I don't think it was a bad movie. And I did say that I was bored, but I still liked it. And there were parts of it that I did like. But I just kind of want them to make new stuff and stop trying to like rehash and show us like, oh, you like this, right? Oh, there's Stay Puft. I don't want any more of that shit. I want to give me something new. Give me some. Oh, and one last thing I want to bring up too. Two points. Because we got to go do our fucking the Seder guy soon too. The fucking when the mom is possessed by Zool and she's walking in the desert and then all of a sudden she has Sigourney Weaver's outfit. Like, I guess they're implying that that's like magic clothes that she has, but it's like that was a little too much. And then the other thing was when they do the ghost montage of like the ghosts are free and they're going crazy, that was real underwhelming. Because what did they have? They just had like one ghost sitting at a diner drinking coffee. And then they had the other ghost that was like an eyeball. Do you remember that ghost?
Yeah.
And that was it. Like, both times in Ghostbusters 1 and 2, those scenes are really awesome with the montages.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I liked it a little bit more than you did. I didn't think it was boring. I was really into, like I said, the first two acts I was really into. Right. I wouldn't say I was bored. I was just a little beaten over the head by the repetitive, like where the nostalgia became repetitive. Yes. That's where I feel like it hurt the movie, but I still enjoyed it. I'd still recommend it. And Charlotte, like we took Charlotte to a 6:00 movie, which meant after previews, it didn't start till 6:30 on a Friday night. And by like 7:15, she like kind of like laid down on me, and I was like, "Uh-oh." And she's like, "No, I'm okay." And then she stayed awake and enjoyed the whole movie. So she was into it a little bit. Like she said that it felt long, but we also went on a Friday night after like, a week of school. So I don't know if that was, if I would have taken her like a Saturday morning show, would she have felt the same way? I don't know.
Yeah.
If
Well, dude,
if my wife wants to go see it though, I would gladly see it again. And it's one of those movies where like maybe my opinion will change in one way or another after multiple viewings.
Right.
But on a first viewing, I liked it.
Well, dude, I really would love to hear what you think about the 2016 Ghostbusters if you end up watching it. I'd just love to hear what you thought after seeing this. That's kind of a unique thing because I think a lot of people saw that 2016 and now they've seen this. You're doing the reverse. I'd love to hear what you think about it by then. But yeah.
Yeah,
so anyway,
I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah. So Danny and I actually have to go do a little bit more research for our next interview that we're going to do tonight. So we got to get going. But Danny, it was awesome to have you on Comic Books Transformed. Brian and I would love to have you on where it could be like the three of us talking sometime. And yeah, man. And I guess if you guys like Danny, then definitely go over to our other channel, The Lassercast, where we talk about horror movies, especially Mike Flanagan stuff. Danny covered Midnight Mass. And what do we got right now on The Lassercast?
If you want to hear more about Ghostbusters, my daughter and I did about a 15-minute review. We posted that the other night. I've been covering the new Chucky series every week. It's so good. I can't say enough good things about it. I've reviewed all 6 episodes. Shudder has a new series that goes up on Wednesdays called Behind the Monsters, where they basically do a 40-minute deep dive into a new slasher movie, a slasher movie villain and their whole franchise. I've covered every episode of that so far. Charlotte sat in with me last time because it was Freddy, and Freddy is, I think, both of our favorites. And I think this coming Wednesday is Jason is the new one. Nice. I'll have a review of Chucky, and I'll try to get my review up of the Behind the Monsters one before Thanksgiving.
Nice, man. Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, so guys, definitely check out the Lassercast because I think it's a great channel. Danny's always pumping out content. And then if you haven't liked and subscribed to this channel, please do too. And we'll see you guys on Wednesday where we're going to be talking about Young Justice, and we're also going to be talking about episode 1 of Hawkeye. All right. See you guys then.